Okay, so this is page 6 of integrals. So find the indefinite integral of the function x cubed minus 2 over x squared plus 1. Remember that the indefinite integral just means the elongated s without any limits. So I'm just going to copy it down here. And I'm just going to rewrite this one here as x to the negative 2 instead, because I think it's easier to do the antiderivative. So I'm just rewriting, so I'm not taking the antiderivative yet. Okay, now I can take the antiderivative. So the antiderivative of x cubed is x to the 4th divided by 4. The antiderivative of negative x to the negative 2 would be negative 2. You just leave negative 2 there, and then the negative 2, you add 1 to it, and it becomes negative 1, and then you put negative 1 in the denominator. And then finally, the plus 1 becomes plus x, and then, of course, there's a plus c at the end. Okay? So that is the indefinite integral. I guess you could simplify a little bit. We could make both of these plus, right? Okay. Number 1, the derivative of the function f is given by f dash equals 3x plus 4x squared. The point negative 1, 0 lies on the graph of f. Find an expression for f. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're just going to find out what f is, and we're going to ignore this thing about negative 1, 0. We don't know what that means yet, okay? So the derivative is f dash of fx plus 3x plus 4x squared. So if we're looking for the original f, basically that would be the antiderivative, right? Because f dash is the derivative of f. So that means f is the antiderivative of f dash. So we could write this as integral of 3x plus 4x squared, right? So let's do that. So the answer would be 3x squared divided by 2 plus 4x cubed divided by 3. Right? And we'd have to do a plus c at the end, right? So this is our function f. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, what does this mean to say that the point negative 1, 0 lies on the graph of f? Well, remember, if they give us a point with coordinates negative 1, 0, that means when x equals negative 1, y equals 0. So when x equals negative 1, f or y equals 0. So basically what they're doing is they're giving us values to substitute in for x and f, and then we can use that to calculate what c is. Because remember, it's c all this time, we don't know what c is. Now we can actually figure out what c is. So let's write that down. So we have 3 halves x squared, except instead of x squared, we're going to put negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared is just 1, right? Plus 4/3 x cubed. If we have negative 1 cubed, that's the same thing as negative 1, right? Because negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. And then plus c, we don't know what c is yet, and then f is just our 0, right? So now we have, let me rewrite this, we have 3 halves minus 4/3 plus c equals 0. And now we use our calculator to figure out 3 halves minus 4/3 is. So 3 halves minus 4/3 is 0.167 plus c equals 0. So c is equal to negative 0.167. So how do we use this to find an expression for f? Well, we know that f is equal to this expression here. Blah, 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 plus blah, 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 plus c. So instead of c, we're going to put negative 0.167. So we'll write it down. We'll write f is equal to 3 halves x squared plus 4x cubed divided by 3 minus 0.167. And that's our answer, because they wanted us to find an expression for f, and that's our expression for f. Okay? So number 3 is going to be similar. It says, now we know that the derivative f dash is 3 minus x. Find f, okay? And we're going to use this to figure out what c is, okay? So first of all, f is equal to, and if we take the antiderivative of 3 minus x, we would get 3x minus x squared divided by 2 plus c, right? And then we use the fact that f of 2 equals 1. We know that f of 2 equals 1, that means x equals 2 and y equals 1. So we're going to put 2 in for x minus 2 squared, which is 4, plus c, and that is equal to y, or f, which is 1. Okay, so that means we have an expression 1 equals 6 minus 2 plus c, right? Because 3 times 2 is 6, negative 4 divided by 2 is minus 2, plus c, and now we can do some algebra here. 1 equals 6 minus 2 plus c is the same thing as 1 equals 4 plus c, which is negative 3 equals c, right? So c equals negative 3. All I did was I combined 6 minus 2 into 4. I have 1 equals 4 plus c. Then I subtracted 4 from both sides. I got c equals negative 3. Now I can rewrite my f function, which is right here, with c equals negative 3. So I would put f equals 3x minus x squared divided by 2 minus 3. So that would be my answer for number 3. Number 5. So number 5 says, it is given that dy dx, and all they're doing here is showing us a bunch of different notations just to remind us there's different ways of saying derivative. Dy dx is another way of saying derivative. So the derivative is 0.2x plus 3x squared plus 1. And they're giving us an x and y pair here, which we're going to use later to find out what c is. Find the value of y when x equals 0.5. Okay, so now they're asking us what y is when x equals 0.5. They never asked us what y function is, but we need to figure that out in this case. Okay, so even though they didn't ask us, if the derivative of y is that, we can easily figure out what the y function is just by doing the antiderivative, right? So 0.2x, the antiderivative would be 0.2x squared divided by 2. 3x squared, the antiderivative would be 3x cubed divided by 3. And the antiderivative of 1 would be 1x, or x. And of course, we would put plus c, right? And then we need to say, oh yeah, they're giving us an x value of 1 and a y value of negative 1. That allows us to find out what c is. So I'm going to put 1 here, I'm going to put 1 here, I'm going to put 1 here, and then I'm going to put negative 1 in for y. Okay? So that means the left side is negative 1 equals, and then 1 times 0.2 divided by 2 is equal to 0.1, right? And then 3 times 1 cubed divided by 3 is just 1, right? And then plus x turns into plus 1, plus c. So that would be negative 1 equals 2.1 plus c. So c is equal to negative 1 minus 2.1, which would be negative 3.1. So then I can rewrite my y function as y equals 0.1 x squared plus x cubed plus x minus 3.1. And then they want to know, find the value of y when x equals 0.5. So now I'm just going to say, okay, so I'm just going to put 0.5 in for x, here, here, and here. And then I'm going to see what I get. So I'll just do that with the calculator. So I'll put 0.1, and then I'll do 0.5 squared. And then I'll do plus 0.5 cubed. And then I'll put minus, or plus 0.5. And then I'll put minus 3.1. And that will be my answer. Negative 2.45. Okay? All right. Now we are going to do some word problems. So for number 7, it says the cost function is the antiderivative of marginal cost. Fixed cost is the cost when x equals 0. That's just some business definitions, which for you guys that are taking IB business, this is like very easy for you, hopefully. And for those of you who aren't taking IB business, you're like, what the heck are they talking about? We can talk about what cost means and what price means offline. Okay, come talk to me if you really, really want to understand this and you're not taking IB business. Okay, So the cost function is the antiderivative of marginal cost. We did maybe do one or two problems when we did differentiation where we knew that the derivative was the marginal cost when the original function was the cost. So that's just the opposite relationship, okay? So what we're going to do is we are going to find the cost function from the marginal cost. So we're going to just take the antiderivative of it. So the marginal cost function is this, and now we're going to find the cost function, okay? So the cost function is the integral of this expression. So it would be x, the integral of x, or the antiderivative of x would be x squared divided by 2. I'm going to rewrite negative 2 over x squared as negative 2x to the negative 2, by the way. So the antiderivative of negative 2x to the negative 2 is going to be negative 2x to the negative 1 divided by negative 1. Because I took the negative 2 exponent, I added 1 to it, I got negative 1, then I divided by negative 1, right? And then finally, the antiderivative of plus 1 is plus 1x, and then finally plus c. So that is the cost function that they told me to find. The only thing that I don't know is c, and I'm going to find c by using the given fixed cost. Remember, the fixed cost is the cost when x equals 0. So if I plug in x equals 0, x equals 0, x equals 0, you can see that the first three terms become 0, and I know that the fixed cost is 145, so basically if I put 0 in for all the x values, then I would get 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus c equals 145, so then I know that c is actually equal to 145 also. Okay, so the cost function is going to be this function that I just wrote down with plus 145 at the end. Okay, so that's my cost function. All right. Maybe a little bit confusing that I called the cost function c and then I have the plus c here at the end. I didn't mean for those to be the same. Number 9, a refrigerator factory's marginal revenue function is m of t equals t squared minus 80, where t is the number of refrigerators produced by the factory and the revenue is given in US dollars. The factory earns $567,000 in revenue from selling 120 refrigerators. Okay, find the revenue function r of t. Remember, the marginal cost function is the derivative of the cost function. For marginal revenue, that is the derivative of the revenue function. So if we want to find the revenue function from the marginal revenue function, we will take the antiderivative because the marginal revenue is the derivative of the revenue, right? So the revenue is the antiderivative of the marginal revenue. So we're going to take the antiderivative of t squared minus 80, and we're going to put dt there because in this case our variable is t instead of x. And I'm going to put antiderivative of t squared is t cubed over 3, and the antiderivative of 80 is 80t, and then I'm going to put plus c. Okay, so that is my revenue function, which is part A, so I could call that r of t. Okay, and the only thing I don't know is what is the c value. So that they give me information to figure out what the c value is. They told me that the factory earns $567,000 in revenue when selling 120 refrigerators. Remember, t is the number of refrigerators. So basically, if I put in 120 refrigerators in for t, then that revenue function gives me $567,000. So I could use algebra or the calculator to figure out what c is here. I'm just going to, first I'm going to take this part here and I'm going to simplify it into a number. So I'm going to put 120 cubed divided by 3 minus 80 times 120. And that gives me 566,400. So this gives me 566,400 plus c equals 567,000. So basically c is equal to 567,000 minus 566,400, which gives me 600. So C is equal to 600. So if I wanted to rewrite this function, I would just put 600 in for C. That's it. Okay? Very easy. I'm not going to do that because I don't have space. Part B, find the factory's total revenue from producing 150 refrigerators. Now that we have the cost or the revenue function right here, pretty easy. All we do is we substitute 150 in there. Okay, so we could put, and you could do this with y equals too. If they ask you a whole bunch of questions, kind of useful to have the function in y equals. So 150 cubed divided by 3 minus 80 times 150 plus 600. And this will give us a revenue from 150 refrigerators. It's 111,360. No, 1,113,600. 1,113,600. Okay, and now we're finally done with the packet.